Welcome into Boxing Scene Today here at the ProBox TV studios. Well, the welterweight division, so many years, the jewel of boxing. But what could the future be? Probably, maybe, Brian Norman Jr. fighting in Japan. That is this week. We break down not just a fight, but his future in a storied division. Jimmy Smith alongside the champs, Chris Algieri, Paulie Malignaggi. Chris, let me start with you. We were discussing before the cameras turned on, because it's what we talk about. When you talk about Brian Norman Jr., it's always, 24, young, just developing, but he's almost old school, 27 fights at 24 years old. Back when I was a kid, right, in the Four Kings era, guys had mid-20s of fights early in their 20s. That's when you were at your best. Is he developing or is he great right now? What's your thought?
So I think he's still developing, but he's getting better each and every time. So he was one of those guys that, like you said, old school. You know, he had his team around him. His father, I believe, is his trainer, may potentially be his manager as well. They took that old school route. They're going to build him up, but they started young, right? It's getting him a lot of. You fight those guys that you learn along the way. He had a lot of those fights. He did what he was supposed to do on all those fights. Gets signed by Top Rank. Ends up on a lot of these undercards. I called a lot of his fights to these undercards. But with Top Rank, they test you. They test you, and they test you, and they test you. And they keep kind of stepping up the competition, putting him with certain types of guys. And he wasn't performing to what Top Rank would expect of him based on what his record was, where they thought he could go. So they started to get a little antsy and like, all right, cool, we're going to match you up with another guy who's been kind of hanging around, and that's Giovanni Santillan. And Santillan was on a run. He was looking really good. And Brian wasn't looking great. Santillan was looking awesome. He came into that fight as the underdog against Santillan, goes out there, puts on a career-best performance, beats the absolute hell out of Santillan, highlight reel knockout, gloating in his face as he goes down for the last time. I mean, you look at that, you're like, who is this guy? He didn't look like that the fight before. So then gets elevated, becomes champion from that, has his first defense, does what he's supposed to do with the kind of guy that he had. But listen, those last two performances, he's turned into a knockout puncher. He's got solid skills. He's physically growing into the weight class. You see his body change. He's turning into a 24, 25-year-old man. So you're seeing a lot of things come together at the right time. Is it enough? Is it a little too soon? Too much too soon? But I don't know. I like what I'm seeing so far. And with the way that the welterweight division is maneuvering, this kid very well could be the next guy at welterweight.
Yeah, when you look at Jin Sasaki, who he's fighting in Japan, this idea, Paulie, we've seen it. Guys go to Japan, A, to make big money. 2, to fight guys that are going to be in front of you and make a battle out of it. We've seen a lot of Japanese fighters, if not overperform, certainly give us great fights because they're in the pocket and they're ready to fight. Is this the kind of showcase you want to see?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. I don't think this is a definitive gimme either. You know, Sasaki does fight, and he has that Japanese warrior mentality. But you know, he attacks in a way where can be even a bit reckless, can be a bit extreme, can make you uncomfortable, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You know, and so you got to be on your P's and Q's with a guy like Sasaki, especially maybe early on in the fight.
He can punch too.
Yeah,
he can punch,
and also because he can hit. I think, you know, along the lines of what the champ was saying, you know, you develop and you grow into these situations. And I do agree in that old school mentality. But once you're champion, you got to take on tough fights. You're no longer growing when you're a champion. I don't believe in, we got to give him time. No. Once you're a champion, you're a champion, dude. Then the bar is raised to, okay, you're expected to defend against tough opposition. The Yanis fight didn't come through. There were business dealings there. But nonetheless, I like this fight. I don't mind this fight. You know, in a welterweight division that's not that great, and in a welterweight division that may be removing Ennis soon, or Ennis may be removing himself from it, there's still somebody to grab the bull by the horn, so to speak. There's still somebody still trying to elevate themselves to that superior status, even as the champions are so. But Norman, you feel, has the upside more than anybody else because he's young, because he's developing. And more so than that, he's also a skill champion. He's not just there are effort champions, in my opinion, and then there are skill champions. Skill champions can keep getting better and better as long as they're at a prime age where their body cooperates. If you're a skill champion and you're older, your body might not cooperate with you. But when you're Brian Norman, who He's a skill type of fighter, a skill champion, and you're also in a prime part of your physical life, and coming into a more prime life part of your physical life. I think you can get even better because the learning, your body will cooperate with the learning and the bettering of your boxing skills. So there is a lot of upside potential to Norman, but like Champ also said, he'd been inconsistent prior to Santillan, so that still lingers in the back of your mind. How consistent can Norman be? That remains to be seen. I do want to see that. He's the youngest champion in boxing right now, 24
years old.
I believe, yeah.
Youngest, maybe second youngest at best. I'll tell you what.
And at welterweight, a storied division.
This is also because a lot of guys are turning pro late and then fighting for championships after 10 fights, but they're already 27, 28.
Yes.
In my day, and I'm sure maybe in your day and even before our day, their champions were turning pro young and winning titles young. I remember Zab Judah won a title at 23. Arturo Gatti won a title at 23. I think Oscar De La Hoya won a title at 22, 23.
I wasn't even boxing at 23.
Yeah. So, you were a kickboxing champ already, though. But I think the in terms of being young, you're young, but it's not that young.
Hey, I remember Wilfredo Benitez.
Yeah, well, Wilfredo is.
I remember I'm old.
Yeah, but Jimmy, Wilfredo is like, okay, that's an extreme 17. That's a bit. But I'm talking about, guys who win titles at 22, 23, 20. I think Gervonta Davis won a title at 22. I think David Benavidez won a title at 22.
Yeah. We still got those guys.
I think that, that's a chance. I mean, Gervonta still fights like he's developing. I don't know what he's doing, but
you know what he's doing? He's cashing checks. That's what he's doing.
Cashing big checks.
Stealing money. That's what he's doing. Yeah. But to people who don't mind getting it stolen from them, so it's on you. But that's another conversation for another day. But I like the way Norman's moving, because he wasn't the guy that everybody was looking at like, oh, like you said, people were starting to wonder if he was even the real deal.
And Top Rank is ruthless. So if you're not performing,
Top Rank is a well-oiled machine in that it's the only company I've seen that just releases undefeated prospects. Like, all right,
guys who become,
we don't know what
we don't think they're going to be great.
So. Other promoters are scumbags. They'll make sure they get you beat first. So you know what? If I'm not going to make money on you, nobody's going to make money on you and get you beat.
Top
Rank's like, all right, dude, whatever.
But Champ, you mentioned that you like this fight. I really do too. And the questions that we have about Brian Norman Jr. can be answered in this kind of matchup because Jin Sasaki is the kind of guy.
Early on, it's a risk fight, dude.
The whole fight, I'm telling you right now, the whole fight is a risk fight.
The odds are risky, considering.
So if Brian Norman doesn't fight the skilled fight like you're talking about, if he's not the skill guy or he doesn't show up or doesn't try to be the skill guy and he tries to fight Jin Sasaki, I think he's actually the underdog. Because Jin Sasaki is, he's one of those guys. He's going to put his head on your forehead, and he's going to bang shots back and forth, and he's got a very good left hook to the body and to the head. I've called a couple of his fights on undercard for some of those Japanese fights for Top Rank International, and this guy can fight, and he'll take shots. He doesn't mind getting hit. He got stopped once by Andy Hiroka. Andy Hiroka's very good, and it was at 140. And Jin Sasaki was killing himself to make a 40. Since he left junior welterweight and has now moved to the 47, 6-0, 6 KOs. Wow. He's better, he's stronger, he's more durable at welterweight. This is a very real fight. At any point, Norman decides that he wants to be in a firefight or feel this guy's power, he's in trouble. He's not in trouble, but he's in danger. Yeah. If he uses his skills, I think if he can be the consistent guy that we want to see that he needs to be the next jewel of the welterweight division, he's going to have to use that skill to offset the ruthless, relentless power punching of Jin Sasaki. So I think this is actually a perfect fight to see if he's got it.
This is also, it's a risk, but the other side of it is it's nice to fight in Japan. It's nice to become
it's also traveling.
Nice to become big in Japan.
Is a risk.
But there's a risk too of you can get a win here and not get the credit you deserve. Like because not a lot of people know how dangerous Sasaki is, right? Yeah. So it's like
if I didn't call his fights, I wouldn't know who he is either.
So it's that too. It's one of those things where people looking back at Norman's career, he may get the win here, and people won't rate this win like they should. Sasaki's especially at the moment, because you got to decide. It's not just who you fight; it's also when you fight them. The moment you're fighting them, guys are rather dangerous or they're not rather dangerous. It's a pretty dangerous moment. So you said Sasaki 6-0, 6 KOs since he got onto the welterweight division, and he has an attacking style. He's going to go for it, and he doesn't want to lose in front of his home crowd.
You're absolutely right, though, to your point, because he's been stopped by Hiroka. People go, we got stopped by a 40-pounder. So Norman gets this win. But you got to look past the numbers
to make the weight. Exactly.
Yeah.
But another thing, you were a kickboxer. I was a mixed martial artist. You were a boxer. The idea that I know a lot of guys when I get asked, some old school guys, right? Man, he kind of dropped off the map. I said, no, he was fighting in Japan for huge money. Yeah. You as an American fan may not have seen where Josh Barnett was for 6 years. He was in Japan making huge money, better than he was here. But to your point, Paulie, to a lot of American fans, and in kickboxing, K1 is where you made money. Mm-hmm. You drop off the radar to American fans. Even though you're fighting tough guys and you're making big money, you aren't necessarily on the radar of American fans. Chris, especially in the sports we were in, it's a choice you kind of had to make. Do I want to be big there and make money, or be big here and be known by American fans? Is there a similar kind of choice, as Paulie said, in boxing a little bit?
I don't think so, because I think that things,
especially now with the internet,
things have changed because of streaming, and it's not so much. There's a lot more dates. We're seeing a lot more fights that are televised. Listen, 10, 15 years ago, the only fights you saw were the top.
When I started boxing in the 90s, and if somebody fought in Japan, you were showing up to the gym that day. What happened with the fight in Japan? Because the fight had happened in the morning, but nobody saw it.
But it wasn't.
And you had like somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody
who called back home.
Yeah,
yeah.
Called back home.
Yeah.
And you know, like, oh yeah, he did this, he looked good. You're like, oh man. And then you had to wait for, there was no internet. You had to wait for KO magazine or Ring magazine for the pictures.
MySpace who had a clip.
Before MySpace, bro. It's like you had to wait for the Ring magazine or KO magazine to come out with the pictures. You know, like
But that dude made a bag of money, and you know, you're like, God, he paid in Tokyo.
But then, like,
but it's not like that anymore, though, because now you can watch everything. You can. I mean, everything's on everything. Whether it's on. Because everything's streaming out. It's on YouTube. It's on Facebook. It's on the lower portion of big cards. It's on the Zone apps. Now we're on ESPN. This card. So I don't think it's the same where you fall off the map because you've gone across the world, just because of the technology and the way that everything is disseminated now. But it is risky because you're not going to get the same American viewership as it happens as you might. So you're giving up that to make some money, but also another caveat of why I really like this fight. I actually think it's going to be an entertaining fight.
Yeah.
Jin Sasaki's not in bad fight. So if you're going to go over there and fight a spoiler, which they don't even make spoilers in Japan, all these guys fight. Yeah. But if you're going to go over there,
no stinkers,
at least get it's going to be you're going to fight somebody who's going to fight, and it's going to be an entertaining scrap. Jin Sasaki's that guy.
Well, when you looked at our last fight that we called here on Pro Box TV, our own Angelo Leo taking on Komoki Kameda, that was in Japan. Kameda came to fight, Paulie. And remember, we were looking at the odds like 6-1, whatever, absurd. And we all, to a man, went, that is out. Dude,
well, the guy from there is not just going to show up. He's not going to go, you're not going to fight in front of his home crowd and half-ass it. You're not going to get that in Japan. Now, you're not going to get that in most places in the world, but especially a very prideful culture like Japan. A guy's fighting in front of his hometown. You're coming from on the outside. He's going to put up a fight. He's going to defend his home territory.
Yeah, but when you look at that similar kind of, hey, look, as you said, you're not traveling over there. The other guy's going to have the crowd, period. All right, you're traveling into hostile territory. Judging, can that be an issue? It always can be when you're on the road. But also, as you said, you're going to a warrior culture. These guys aren't laying down. Even the guys, as Chris pointed out, that may be up and down in certain fights, they're going to get it together for the big fight in Japan. What's your thought on that?
Well, it's not just that. It's also he's fighting for the championship of the world, right?
Title,
so it's that translates in any culture.
Title shot.
That translates in any culture. Any culture you're in. I mean, every kid who starts boxing in any part of the world, any corner of the world, their ultimate dream is to win a world championship, grab a world championship. So anybody who gets to that point in their career, no matter where the fight is, I mean, that's the moment. I remember my first title fight, which I lost. It wasn't even about the opponent. It wasn't about anything. It was just like, wow, I'm fighting for the championship of the world. It doesn't matter who it is. You're not even thinking about that. You're at that point. It's the moment that you have always wanted since you first stepped into a boxing gym is here. And that's for Sasaki. That's a big deal. And for Norman, he just got to that point, so he doesn't want to lose it himself. So it's a good fight.
Now, when you look at, of course, Brian Norman Jr., Chris, the debate we start off when we're beginning this discussion was, am I looking for development, or am I looking for somebody right now that can take over the welterweight division? Which are you looking for, and what do you intend to see?
I like exactly like Champ said earlier. He's a world champion now, so the development phase is over. But I want to see maturity. I want to see him progress as well. So you can still get better as you're a champion. And there's that old saying, a champion gets 30% better, as they become a titleist. We already had that fight. Now, are you going to get better from that last fight as well? And you have a tougher opponent than you did the last time. So I want to see those improvements. I want to see him build. But at the same time, as much as I want to see those improvements, if he's going to win this fight, he's going to have to improve. Because if he goes out there and just tries to bang with Sasaki, it's a tough fight. If he goes out there and works behind his jab, sets things up, uses defense, that's going to be the development that I want to see, and that's what's going to get him the win and keep that belt.
Yeah, if he shows some of the flaws that we've seen at times in his style, he risks his title. So if he's continuing to better himself the way a developing fighter in general does, a guy his age continues to improve, then, you expect to see something maybe special out of Norman in this fight and continuing to grow.
When we talk about young champions, one of the ones we didn't bring up, of course, Mike Tyson from my era, won the title at 20 years old. I've talked to boxing trainers, Paulie, who said he never got better than he was at 22, right? That the guy peaked at 21, 22 years old. So when you see a young fighter and you go, man, he has years to get better, some fighters don't. Some fighters peak in their early 20s. Is that something you look out for? As Chris said, that development. Well, yeah, he's 24. He's got years.
It's also when it's like that, it's more so a mentality issue.
Yep.
You know, I don't think it's a physical issue. I think everybody physically peaks around the same time. We're all human beings. We physically peak at some point in our 20s, right? But I think when guys stop peaking so early, I think it's more of a mentality issue, maybe a discipline issue, you know, distraction issue. I mean, dude, and that's a metaphor for life in general. Some guys peak in high school, for life, not for boxing, in life.
Right.
In general. So I mean, I think it's a mentality issue more than that. I think if your mentality is in the right place, you're going to continue to grow at Norman's age, and you'll continue to physically and mentally peak and grow to become better. It depends on what your vision is. You know, are you chasing greatness, or are you chasing I don't know, status, money? You know, if you're chasing status and money as opposed to chasing greatness, sometimes you can get a little distracted. You know, because there are a lot of things that can give you status and money. You can get caught up in that world. If you're chasing greatness, it'll keep you honed in on what the goal should be. And status and money tend to follow that anyway, so you don't have to think about it.
As the champ just said, a man might be chasing greatness. Brian Norman Jr. versus that Jin Sasaki that is in Japan. Check it out. Going to be an outstanding fight. And as it makes news, we'll talk about it here on Boxing Scene Today. Tune in. Find out why millions are watching.